If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up? I'll go first. I live in Warsaw, Poland now, but I always stay in touch with what's happening in the US, and I happened to hear about that Las Vegas shooting when someone opened fire on a bunch of concert goers, and it was very tragic news. But that day, I also went to the movies, so I was already in a kind of weird mental state, and when I left the movies, I got on the tram again in Warsaw, and I saw this guy kind of being sketchy and acting weird in the last seat. And I kept eyeing him the whole time, and he had his jacket open and he was holding something inside. He was hiding it. And I thought, my first American thought was it's a gun or a knife or some kind of weapon, and I need to move away as soon as possible. So I kept looking at him the whole ride, and then he takes it out, and it was a beer can. He was sipping it and hiding it during the tram ride. That's what happens in Poland, not guns, not knives. And I started crying and laughing at the same time because that's when I realized, wow, that's messed up.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, you're going to be hearing from Americans who are living abroad, and they're going to be discussing the first time they realized that America messed them up.
Right, because according to some of the speakers we're going to be listening to today, they feel like they have been somewhat cheated in America, and it only had to take them living outside of America for them to see some of the systems that were very, very wrong, and for others to even realize, and these are palm-colored people, some of them are palm-colored people, for them to realize that America is somehow racist and some of their policies don't work as well as they are made to believe while they're living in America.
Right, so if you have any opinion, kindly leave it on the comment section so that we can get to read all your thoughts. And also let us know, what do you think about this episode? Consider subscribing if it's your first time here. Let's watch.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
So I'm an American living in Germany. And I remember when I first got here, my landlord was showing us our new place where we're going to be staying. And as we're on our way driving there, we're passing all these fields and open grass areas and places where they've planted flowers and planted fruits and vegetables and trees, and there's just all these vast fields and hiking trails and stuff. And my landlord turns to me and says, hey, you know, you and your family will enjoy this. You know, you go out there, you can ride your bikes, you could pick fruit, you could walk all the hiking trails, you could pick the take photos and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, I looked at her and I said, my family, like people that look like us, is allowed to go out there and just, you know, nobody bothers them or nothing happens, you know, no cops are called or nothing like that. And she looked at me with like the saddest look in her eyes, and she was just like, people like you? What does that mean? And I looked at her and I'm like, people like us, black people. And she was like, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that there. But here you don't have to deal with that. So yes, please enjoy all of it. That really messed me up.
So I started my new job in the Netherlands. This was 3 years ago, and I was going through the company policy the first week. And I got to the section about leave, and they have a holiday leave, like PTO, and then they had sick leave in two different areas. And I was reading about sick leave, and I turned to my coworker and I was like, I don't understand. Like, it talks about like the requirements for sick leave and like doctor notes like after 3 days, but how many sick days do we get a year? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how many are they? It doesn't say. She's like, it's just if you're sick, you're out. I'm like, I don't understand. She's like, it's unlimited. It's just if you're sick, you take a sick day. She was confused. I was shocked. There's a moment I realized we're fucked up in America and how we deal with people being sick with work.
Currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
Oh my gosh, such a great question. I have so many. The one that sticks out of my mind right now is the first time I celebrated the 4th of July, and the Kiwis were like, oh, happy 4th of July. And I'm like, yeah, suckers. We broke away from the Queen a long time ago and we have freedom and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, hold on. What freedoms don't we have? And why is it bad that other countries work together to protect each other and help each other? And America's always talking about freedom, and what freedoms do you have that we don't have? And I was like, hold up. All this rhetoric that I was told my whole life, the land of the free, we need to fight for our freedom, and it's such a value in the American society. And when you think about how many countries are just as free, where does this freedom value come from? I mean, it came back from the Revolutionary War, but hello, there's a lot of countries that are free. It was eye-opening.
Made you realize that America really...
So I'm American, my husband is Danish, we live in Copenhagen. Last night we were driving home, we're in the car, it's like 11 p.m. And there's a guy who appears to be like passed out, slumped against a wall in our neighborhood. My husband is like, oh, we should stop and see if he's okay. My first reaction was fear. I literally thought, what if this guy is faking it, and then when you go up to him to help him, he's gonna like get up and mug you. So I'm like, okay, be careful. My husband goes over to the guy, I'm watching from across the street, and I can see that the guy kind of starts reaching behind him. What's my first thought? Gun. He's got a gun. He didn't have a gun, he was just trying to get up. He couldn't get up. At this point, it's pretty clear that he is super drunk, he's thrown up on himself, he's pretty much unresponsive. So then we're like, okay, he needs some help, he shouldn't be out here all night, and my husband suggests we call the police. Where does my mind go? If we call the police to get him help, what if they come here and escalate it and kill him? That doesn't happen here. We did call a non-emergency number and they sent someone for him. But my gut instinct is not to help someone because I could get hurt.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
So I moved to the UK about 10 years ago for university, and literally my very first night there, I was fresh off the plane. It was freshers night, which is like the whole first week of university in the UK. You like go out drinking at like different bars or whatever. And we went out drinking, and this one girl that I was with got so drunk that on the way back home to our student accommodation, she was like, oh, I need to sit down. And she sat down and she just like passed out, and we could not wake her up. Like the girl was just like dead to the world, it seemed like. And immediately the people I was with was like, we need to call an ambulance. And being an American, I was like, we cannot call an ambulance. Like I had just met this girl, I had no idea if she could afford an ambulance. So I was like begging them not to call an ambulance, and they were looking at me like, do you want this person to die? Like what is wrong with you? So they called an ambulance, the ambulance came, they like checked her out, like she was, you know, alive or whatever, and they took her to the hospital. And I was like hysterical because I was like, oh my God, I've like just moved here and I've like potentially ruined this person's life by like putting them in medical debt for the next God knows how long by calling them an ambulance. And like they brought me home, they sat me down and they were like, what are you freaking out about? And I explained what I was so worried about, and they were like, ambulances are free, hospitals are free, what is wrong with you? And like, I hadn't realized until that point that healthcare in the UK was completely free. And I still, to this day, like, get nervous every time I have to call an ambulance. But yeah, no, ambulances are free.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
So I've been living in Europe for the last 10 years, and when I was dating my now husband, who's British, and we're talking about, you know, what do we want out of life and what are our values and what's important to us, and I said, you know, what's your opinion on having a gun in your home? And he was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And I was just like, oh, is this like not a thing? Because actually in a past relationship, a boyfriend I had, like it was a big issue for us that we had really differing opinions on that. And yeah, American problems, eh?
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America...
So I've been in Canada for about 1.5 years now, and one of the biggest things I notice now is just how spoiled and entitled Americans really are. It'd be the simplest things, like when you get to the crosswalk here and people are walking, people just stop and let them walk across the street. No matter if the lights turning, there's no honking, there's no anger. It's just you let people go 'cause it's the decent thing to do. People say, please, thank you, sorry. Like, it's a crazy thing that people make fun of Canadians for saying sorry all the time. But they really genuinely say sorry, please, thank you, excuse me, stuff like that. That should be basic shit. But, nah, they don't really do that back home. Wildest part is, I don't even miss it back home anymore. Like, this is just home now.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
Well, I could tell you about one time or 7. when I realized that after having lived in Germany for several years, I had not once been to the doctor or dentist because I thought there are hidden costs, co-pays, for every visit. Nope. Or when I first ate spaghetti in front of Europeans like this, I realized that my sacrilegious slicing of the noodles was not just a lack of cultural awareness. It was so that I could pre-process my food so that I could eat faster and, more importantly, more, so I could stuff my gluttonous face instead of patiently twirling the noodles and, enjoying the meal. Or whenever I hear non-native English speakers speak impeccable English or another foreign language, I think about the time when I used to think, for about 20 years of my life, that learning a foreign language was unimportant, like juggling. A fun but ultimately useless party trick, until I realized how valuable, exciting, enriching, and world-opening learning another language really is. Or when I realized that standing up to urinate means that I had been spreading my pee droplets all over my bathroom for 2 decades. Or when I realized that you can make a delicious cake and it doesn't have to be what the Germans call a Zuckerbombe. And it's better. Who would have thought less sugar is better? Non-Americans is the answer. Or more seriously now, when I saw the George Floyd video, I was unsurprised, completely. I was almost unmoved in comparison to my German partner, who was absolutely appalled and shocked at seeing the video. And cynically and unsympathetically, I said to her, this happens all the time in the US. It's normal. I realized in that moment just how much the US had calloused me to the topics of police brutality and racism. And I also said to her, nothing's ever going to change. That moment I realized that hopelessness is a normal reaction that many people have. And let's wrap up with New Year's Eve in Germany. Every year here, it's fireworks anarchy that goes against every German stereotype that exists. Every year, people, typically teenage boys, throw these super loud cherry bombs. And every time, my gut reaction is fight or flight mode. Cortisol and adrenaline spike, anxiety and anger follow. Because when you have lost friends to gun violence, and when you have good friends who are survivors of a mass shooting at your university, these sounds to you are deadly serious. And so every New Year's in Berlin, there's basically 3 groups of people who get triggered by these fireworks and explosions. Pets, Americans, and the people who lived in Berlin in 1945.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America...
I'm an American living in Italy. I've lived in Asia. I've lived in Australia. And sure, there's lots of things that still confuse me. The metric system. Why are we the only ones that use Fahrenheit? But you know what really grinded my gears? When I was working in Vietnam, doing work exchange at a hostel, and I was asked to write the date down. And I wrote down, it was February 9th, 2019. So I wrote, 2/9/2019. And my coworker looked at me, she was Vietnamese, very confused, and she came over and made it 9/2/2019. And I was like, are we in a different planet? Like, why did you just do that? And she goes, we do the day, the month, the year. Your country is the only country in the world that does the month, the day, the year. And it makes so much more sense with the day, the month, the year. And we gotta feel special and go the month, the day, the year. And we gotta feel special and use Fahrenheit over Celsius, feet over meters. But the day, the month, the year, it just makes so much more sense, dude.
If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really...
So I am originally from the United States, I'm from Indiana, and I moved to Germany back in 2014. And I went to the doctor a couple years back. I had some throat pain and stomach pain, just general pain through here. So I went to my general practitioner, family doctor, and I said, hey, I've got all this pain, I don't really know what's up. And he said, okay, for my opinion, you should be fine, but if you want, I can write you a recommendation to go see a specialist. I said, sure, fine, whatever. So I went to go see the specialist, and they did an endoscopy, and then they also did an ultrasound of my intestines, and they did an endoscopy to see what was wrong with my esophagus and trachea and all that stuff. And the test came back negative. They didn't see anything. They didn't find anything. It was just stress or something like that. And when I was going out of the doctor, I stopped at the front desk and I said, okay, well, how do I pay? When the woman looked at me like I was insane, and I said, there has to be, like, do you need my insurance card? Do you need, like, a credit card? Like, how does this happen? And she looked at me and she said, no, if we need anything, your insurance will send you a letter in the mail. And they never did. So it's really nice to be able to do that here in Germany. And it's taken a lot to get used to, just being able to go to the doctor and having whatever ails you looked at and not have to worry, is this going to bankrupt me? So that's been nice.
So guys, welcome back. The first thing I got from all these speakers today is that the main thing they were complaining about, or rather the main experience they shared with us, was about their healthcare system and how America has presented such difficulties for its citizens to get proper healthcare that they think it's normal and it's supposed to be like this until they go outside America, and then they realize that some countries actually have better systems for their citizens.
Right, and us getting to this point right now, guys, if UK has free healthcare, right, and people even use ambulances for free, yet sometimes it might cost an arm and a leg in America for people to use ambulance when going to the hospital. Now that we are confronted with all these situations, comparison from other Americans who are living outside of America, the big question we have to ask ourselves at this crossroads is, what can the people do? What can the citizens of America do in order for them to change this situation? What are they willing to do in order to change this situation? Because one thing, guys, you need to remember is no matter what policies are passed by the government, the policies that are passed because the citizens allow the politicians to pass these policies. Because what I truly firmly believe is it is difficult for Americans to change policies right now, but one step at a time, if and when everybody holds each other's hands, they can get some policies changed, because at the end of the day, politicians are not as many as American citizens.
Yeah, another thing I want to bring to our attention is that this just goes to show that many people in America may be losing their lives, not necessarily because there was nothing that could be done, but because of the hurdles they have to go through. Because I remember, I don't know if it's part of this video, I don't know if I played it for you, but there's a video I watched about an American who went to live outside America, and they ended up cutting their leg. Now the friend offered to take him to the hospital, but he vehemently refused, and he was refusing because in America it would cost you a lot to get fixed, to get a tetanus shot, just for the doctor to see you. So for that reason alone, he didn't want to burden his friend, until the friend vehemently insisted as well to take him to the doctor for the leg to get checked. Otherwise, he wanted to duct tape the injury and just stay like that. So when they went to the hospital and he got all those services for free, he wondered, because America, and he said as much, it could have costed him more. So you see a situation where people are refusing medical help because they feel like they can't afford it, because in America that is the situation. Yeah. Another thing someone talked about was, there was a lady who was talking about an experience where she had watched about a shooting in, was it Las Vegas or LA, and she lives outside America, but she watched that news, and that just caught her on a day where she happened to have gone to the movie. So when she was coming back, I feel like people carry that trauma with them. So she entered the train, and her eyes were particularly fixed on that one guy in the train who had his hands in his jacket, and she thought this guy was carrying a gun. You know, that trauma thing that happens in America. She thought the guy was armed and was carrying a gun. So she had her eyes fixed on this person. Why? Because she was just watching the news, and that has been the life she was living, until she observed this man slowly removing his hand from his pocket, and he happened to have been carrying a beer can, and he was just peacefully drinking his drink, and he didn't want to just do it publicly like that. And then she relaxed, and what overcame her was a mixture of laughter and crying, because on the other hand, that was the safest thing someone could do in a train. But if it was in America, people literally get shot for putting their hands on the dashboard by the orders of the police, just because the police thinks you're removing a firearm or some type of weapon to attack them. This, I feel like it speaks to the security in America. Right. And the things that people have been indoctrinated to feel. Imagine, it's not normal for you to be moving around with that feeling of fear. It's not normal.
Right. And I think the case that I gravitated towards mostly was because it was the one that the black guy, I don't know if he moved to Germany or what country that was that he moved to. And then when he was going to look for an apartment, he was told that they could access everywhere, and that specific area he didn't believe even black people could access. And this just goes to show how I feel like a lot of things start in America, and when its citizens come together to see the wrong that is happening in America, both the black and the white people, I feel this is how change will start being impacted slowly.
Yeah, and can we talk about the lady who was talking about her and her partner who's a foreigner? She lives with him, and she asked him about how he feels about having a gun in the house. And I feel like in America this is such a big deal, because a lot of people believe in protecting themselves and a lot of people believe in firearms. But when you go outside America, there are people who have never even seen guns. Like, for example, here in Africa, a lot of people don't see guns. Like, a big population of people do not even see guns unless you're a
police officer walking in front of you. That is the only time you get the chance to see a gun.
But in America, surprisingly, even kids can mention to you or show you different types of ammunitions, and they can tell you this is this type of weapon, this is this type of weapon. But here in Africa and like other places, there are people who've not seen what guns look like. So I do see how this can be a problem, and you see why she felt like at that moment that is how America messed her up, because for them it's very normal, but for other people it can be even a deal breaker, because their sense of security, let's just say, it's kind of different from what Americans are used to. So guys, I'd like to hear from you. At what point did you think, or did you feel like that was the time you recognized that America messed you up? What is it that you went through, or what is it that you experienced that made you feel that way?
Right. And as she has said, in Africa we don't experience that kind of insecurity of having to worry about walking outside of your house because someone can gun you down outside of your house, because there are not so many guns for the public to have. So that being said, I feel like right now a lot of people, when you ask them if it's their dream to go to America, nowadays the change is shifting and not so many people want to go. And personally, I feel like my eureka moment when I realized that I didn't want to live in America as such was when I realized just how easily someone could lose their lives because of how readily or easily people can access guns, and more so the insecurity that the cops themselves present to black citizens in America. I feel like that was my eureka moment, because growing up I always wanted to go to America, but not after I entered high school. That was when my perception of America started changing slowly.
Yeah, so guys, I think we're going to be ending it there, and we want to thank you so much as usual for catching our episode. Let's catch you on the next. Consider subscribing if it's your first time here. Yeah.